The Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is a tier 10 German tech tree light tank. And believe it or not, I believe that this tank is the perfect example of balance in World of Tanks Blitz. In fact, I think that this is the most capable tank for what it has going for it, yet also the most uncapable in certain areas. Let me explain, right? The way Wargaming decided to balance the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is by giving it every special consumable, every special ability. So it has adaptive concealment and tracer shells, which is what the 132-1 has, and the T100LT has put into one tank. So this vehicle can get unspotted in 7 seconds rather than the normal 10. It can see who spotted it immediately, and it can keep whatever it's shooting lit up for 20 seconds at a time. And these mechanics are amazing, because they entirely make up for the other downsides this vehicle has. The Panzerwagen has absolutely no armor. Its accuracy is mediocre at best, its shell velocity is rather poor, and it just does not have any penetration either. So you have like this really, really solid mechanically based tank, but a gun that kind of sucks in terms of mediums and light tanks. But that's actually great, and the reason why is because this is the first tank that Wargaming has actually been able to balance that plays like a light tank. It values its spotting mechanics and special abilities more than the gun, and that is amazing, right? When I'm driving a light tank in Blitz, the problem is they play more like mediums, just with a little bit better camo and a little bit better view range. If you play a light tank on World of Tanks PC, the main advantage that they have is the fact they have really bad guns most of the time. Like if you look at something like the Manticore on PC, that tank has awful levels of overall DPM. It's like 1600 DPM. But because it has such bad DPM, it has the highest view range, and it has insane levels of camo. So it's amazing at spotting for its team. And the thing about Blitz is that the maps are too small to do something like that. You can't make a vehicle that has great view range and spotting mechanics but terrible DPM, because at the end of the day, you need to have some DPM to make up for the turbo battles and the gameplay that Blitz teams have in general. So to make up for that, the best way to counter that in Blitz is by giving light tanks special abilities, specifically tracer shells and adaptive concealment, because tracer shells allows you to basically have really good view range, keeping an opponent spotted for 20 seconds at a time, and adaptive concealment allows you to get unspotted faster, meaning that you can play aggressive, get unspotted, and back into cover. And these two abilities combined are what allows the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen to actually play more like a spotting light tank rather than a damage farming beast. Now, it can still farm damage, as we can see in this game here. I'm already up to 4,000 damage in this battle, which is pretty good, and I haven't even bled a single hit point. The tank still has 3,000 effective damage per minute, which is pretty solid, and means that in most situations, you're not going to have to worry too much about getting out damage. But the gun is really mid. Like, I'm not going to lie. I don't love the gun on this tank. The APCR standard has a tough time cutting through most tier 10 heavies. It's going to bounce any angled surface, and not only that, literally when shooting at the lower plate of an E75, you have to load gold. So that's kind of a bummer. But I also think that's how light tanks should be. I've said it many times in the past, I'm a firm believer in the fact that light tanks and mediums should not be able to reliably pen heavies frontally. They should have to be able to aim for weak spots. They shouldn't just be able to spam gold at an E100 turret or a mouse turret cheek and immediately pen it. I feel like mediums are more supposed to flank, they're supposed to use their hull down capabilities and get to the sides and things like that. And that's exactly what this vehicle does. It has enough gold pen to cut through an E100 turret, if, you know, not angled. It has enough gold pen to cut through a mouse turret cheek, again, if not angled, but it's not enough to reliably cut through any tank unless the player itself is playing it poor. The tank itself has really bad armor, has absolutely zero HE resistance. It does feature reactive armor, which I know, for any of you that know Dizzy, he's a really, really good player and loves this tank. And he likes to run reactive armor. I don't. But he does very well in it. He averages like 3,800 average, and on my account, I've got around 3,800. So we both have very different play styles. I just run tungsten and adrenaline because I can farm as much damage as possible, and then he runs reactive armor so that he can, you know, save a bit of HP. But either way, whatever loadout you're going for with this vehicle, it's cool that you can choose your own capabilities. So in this battle here, I've already gotten a nice shell into the Kampfpanzer 50-ton, and now we are going to reload, and we'll see what we are. Take a brief blow my nose break, but we're back, and let's get back to talking about the Rheinmetall. Point being, right, this tank plays like a light, and that's what I love about it. It doesn't play like a medium, it doesn't play like some cringe high alpha tank destroyer like the Sheridan. It plays like a light tank should. And this should be a lesson for wargaming, to learn how to balance their future tanks and vehicles that are already in the game. They need to be balanced more around the way they play, the way they spot, and not necessarily how much damage they can farm, because damage isn't everything. Winning and playing like a teammate is. And that's the one thing I think PC has over Blitz right now, is that World of Tanks PC, each tank class has its own designated role. And in general, people try to play that role. When you watch light players play on World of Tanks PC, they actually seem to know what they're doing for the most part. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to YOLO and kill themselves, but at least they know that, hey, my role is more for spotting, rather than, hey, my role is to try and farm as much damage as possible. So we have the enemy Sheridan over here. We're going to get a shell into his butte. And then, unfortunately, this was just a poor shot for me. I try shooting at the Sheridan and, unfortunately, over-aim it by an inch and end up missing. But it doesn't really matter too much. The Super Conk's rolling onto his side. I load a high explosive into the link between the track spacing there, and we're up to 2,000 damage. Okay, well, this here is going to be a great example of the adaptive concealment paired with the tracer shell mechanic. The enemy Jagdpanzer E100 has terrible camo values. We spotted that Jag right through the bush, and just like that, I get a 286 damage shell. That's not a lot of damage. It's a good example, right? This tank doesn't do too much damage, but what it does do is I'm keeping that Jagdpanzer spotted. Every time I shoot him, that tank is now lit up for another, 20 or so seconds. And because of that, it means that the Jagdpanzer really can't do anything here. And that's the whole point of a light tank, is to stop tank destroyers. It's to stop vehicles from being able to make these plays. Of course, my 777 drives right out in the open and gets shot. But you can see, like, the gun on this tank is not very good. It misses most of the shells it fires. It's really, really disappointing in that regard. All right, well, we're going to try and get a shell into the 60. Unfortunately, our Badger just does a great job here at eating all of the damage we could have fired on the 60 by blocking and face-hugging, which, I don't know, it's a little cringe, but it's whatever. We're going to just get off to the side here, and, well, maybe we can get some damage into the minnow. We can see that the enemy team's not doing great at this point. I'm going to wait a little bit, just so I'm unspotted, because I don't want to get rushed by this, or, push the minnow and then have him immediately nuke me. Try and shoot a shell into the side of its turret. Obviously, that does not end up hitting. Okay, well, let's get to the side of the minnow here. Minnow does get one shell. 566. What the heck? If that minnow hit me again, I would have died because of that. That is insane. 566. I'm telling you guys, my RNG is terrible in this game sometimes. But hey, at least the minnow gets shot by me, gets shot by the Badger, and gets lit on fire. So that's pretty nice. Now we're going to roll over to the Yag. We're going to get one shell into the side of the Yag. And because we've got our adrenaline cooking, we can obviously continue farming out this player. There you go. Another nice 303. Minnow is no longer able to look at us because the Badger's pushing him. And bonk! Easy shell into the side of his vehicle, dealing over 4,000 damage. These two games here were great examples of where the Panzerwagen does a great game. I mean, it's got mobility, it's got DPM, it's got gun depression, but it doesn't have anything insane going for it, right? If you compare this vehicle to something like a Sheridan or even a T100 LT, I think that both the Sheridan and T100 LT can make a bigger impact in regards to the damage output. But what these tanks have the advantage of is the fact, or this tank has the advantage of, is the fact that it plays more like a light. You have the spotting, you have the ability to keep people lit up, and you also get unspotted faster. I think this tank's great, and you guys can let me know your personal feelings in the comments down below, but I actually think this is a really fun vehicle, and it's definitely a tank I would recommend if you like that more passive style spotting gameplay. But you can let me know your personal feelings in the comments. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!